All right, in this video, what we're going to talk about and consider is what type of action you're going to choose to go still hunting with. You're going to see this evaluation is fairly exhaustive. I've used a lot of my own experience and mistakes that I've made and evaluated some of the desires I've had for different types of rifles and just given an honest valuation of what action is the best. There's several things that a still hunt requires. You know, as you sneak through the timber, oftentimes while you're still hunting, unfortunately, you don't see the game before it sees you. It gets up out of its bed and it may take a few jumps and give you a shot when it stops to look back, or it may be moving as it's getting out of the area at a slow move. That requires a rifle that's going to be light to carry, light to stay alert with all day, light to get into position with, an action that's quick to, or a rifle that's quick, a rifle that's quick to fire your initial shot in a steady position, but more importantly, quick to cycle for a follow-up shot. Most of the stuff I've shot at in the east or timbered areas has been between, let's say, 0 out to 150 yards. And then when you get into mountainous terrain and stuff like that, most of the shots that I've taken have been out to maybe 250 yards. A lot of the stuff you actually run into when you're still hunting is closer than what people are proposing to shoot at these days. What the action needs to provide is some accuracy, whether that's accuracy in the way you sight the rifle, whether it has a scope or iron sights. When you're considering the action, you've got to consider what ammo you have available, especially if you're a beginner. You're not always going to reload, and so that ammo or that caliber provided in that action needs to give you a wide choice of ammo. Also, a wide choice in bullet selection, depending on the game that you're going to go after. It needs to be very carryable, if that makes sense. Something that's not awkward or cumbersome, something that's fairly light and wieldy that you can get into action and, again, a shooting position fairly quickly. They need to be available. There's a lot of neat actions out there as you progress into hunting. You might pick some up, but there's a lot of neat actions that really are not that available. And the calibers they shoot are not readily had. And that includes new calibers these days. And then another thing, you don't like to think about it, but it sure is nice to have and not need it, and that's round capacity. Okay, so you need to have enough rounds to follow up shots. Heaven forbid you make a bad shot, you need to hurry up and put that animal out of its misery. And then the rifle action needs to provide quick, but more importantly, as you shoot subsequent rounds, it's accurate. Okay. Those actions and calibers also need to be shot in a variety of positions. If you remember the book that I showed the other day, my old Hunter Ed book, and I'll teach these positions later on, but you need to be able to shoot from the prone, kneeling, sitting, standing, and each of those should have a unsupported or just your body position supporting it and a supported position that you're able to fire from. And then lastly, which probably should be firstly, one of the things that we're going to consider when we're picking an action is the cost of introducing you to a rifle that you're likely and able to shoot. Okay. Okay, now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of evaluating actions. And the reason I'm going into this pretty exhaustive is I want to show you that I've thought about this. And the biggest factor or the biggest reason for me to think about this is I wanted to alleviate stress or stressors on my family by picking a caliber that was well suited for the east and the west and still hunting, and also the action that was well suited for the east and the west and still hunting. And if you're just getting into this, I don't want to introduce any stressors into your relationships that are undue. You'll see a lot of guys who are not satisfied and have a way of becoming discontent, where buying a new piece of equipment or a new toy, essentially it's a toy, well, it's not, a lot of toys like gear and stuff like that, they do that to fill a gap in between. What I'm trying to show here is that there's been a lot of thought to it. When you get the rifle in the action, or a rifle in action similar to what I'm going to talk about, you don't need another one. You just need to get good with what you have. And then more than anything, and it costs no money, it'll cost you some time, is you're going to need to get into the woods. So let's talk about the mentality of this. When I look at a rifle, and some of this has to do with my military background, right? It becomes a useful extension of my arm, a rifle, especially if I get comfortable with it. But ultimately, it's just a tool. You know, when I was first starting construction, guys would come to the job site, and they're all good guys, but they would buy the next fancy tool, right? Like, for example, I specifically remember a jigsaw. And if you remember my old boss, he just was old school, and he liked for someone to know how a tool worked versus having a tool that had all the bells and whistles. He asked to borrow somebody's jigsaw one time. He's looking at it, he's like, the hell, what the heck is all this? He's like, there's so many, buttons and levers. And it was a pretty adjustable jigsaw. He's like, dadgum, he's like, that's so complicated. He's like, all it needs to do is go up and down. He's like, I know how to use it. You just need a blade that goes up and down. And similarly, you just need a rifle that goes bang often, all the time, and hits where you're aiming all the time, or often at least. All right, so very, very similar analogy. I pick a rifle to be a good utilitarian tool. Sure, you can go up. I think there is a diminishing returns as far as value and dollars that you'll spend on a rifle. So I want to talk about what's the best bang for the buck right now. All right, and you're the one that has to be the best for the job, not necessarily a rifle. Now, don't mistake this as me telling you to go just pick up the cheapest, junkiest rifle. All right. So we need to talk about the tool being the best for the job. All right. And again, I went through and started to evaluate what different positions I shot in. All right. Probably 30% of the time when I'm still hunting, my shooting positions are from the standing position, but they're standing supported. Like as I'm still hunting, I rest beside a tree to break up my outline, and also if I see something, I automatically have a rest right beside me that I can use from the standing position. The other 30% have been from the kneeling supported position. So I'm kneeling on the ground, and this usually happens in mountainous or hilly terrain more than anywhere. I have a chance to take a knee looking down on something, and I can shoot. And that happens the kneeling supported position. So 30% standing supported, 30% kneeling supported. You notice I'm always trying to get a support anytime I fire my rifle. 20%, this goes against the grain, and that's just because they jump up and they're close and it's quick. 20% of the time has been offhand unsupported shots. You're walking or still hunting, you're looking around, but we don't have senses like animals. You take a step and then up stands up, or up jumps something you're hunting for, and you have to shoot offhand to try to kill it. So 30% standing supported, 30% kneeling supported, 20% offhand, 5% maybe sitting supported, sitting behind a log. I've done that a few times the last few years, and leaned over that log. Most of it's kneeling and leaned over that log. But I've done about 5% of it sitting and leaned over that log. And then 5% would be the prone supported position. Now, this is for still hunting. And I know this doesn't always apply to guys that are glassing out west, or guys that are hunting out of tree stands in the east. But we're not doing that. We're still hunting through the area where animals live. 5% is prone supported or unsupported. So prone supported means I'd be resting on a bag. Unsupported means I'm up on my elbows shooting that way. But that's only happening 5% of the time. I mean, honestly, in the last, 35 years, I think I've shot at one animal. Yeah, one animal off my belly. And that was out west, and that was with an elk shooting uphill. So as we evaluate these, we're going to consider that. Now, the first thing we're going to do is look at the different actions. Now, I don't have every single one here, but I've got them. I got something that is or replicates something similar to the most common actions. All right, the first would be a lever action. Now, this is something that I mean, this is hard to not get drawn into. These things are classic American rifles. They've shot a lot of game, killed a lot of game, especially in the East where most of the game was located. But this is your classic lever action. Specifically, this is a Model 94 Winchester. Pretty neat rifle. We'll talk about this style of action and its pros and cons. Now, I don't have a specific pump action. You'll see guys that are tracking deer up north. They use a lot of slide action rifles. They're interesting. And then finally, I just have a simple bolt action. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is bolt action. Now, I showed you how the action works, but most of the time you'll store your rounds in a magazine, whether that be a box magazine or a detachable box magazine. Okay, you can have an internal magazine. That's basically where you load all your rounds from the top. And then you have a floor plate where you can drop this magazine, all the rounds fall out. This rifle in a typical caliber is able to carry 3 in the magazine. Box magazine with traditional calibers can do the same thing. One that I showed you just a minute ago with this floor plate, this actually is able to carry several rounds. So you could do 5 in the magazine with the floor plate. You could carry 6 rounds, 1 in the chamber, 5 in the magazine. This actually is a 30-06 caliber, but some of the newer designs can't hold that many rounds. If you have them in your magazine, it makes them easy to carry around all day long and they don't make noise. So there's that. All right, the lever action typically, but you'll have a side gate and you can slip rounds one after the other in this side gate. You could load 6 into the tubular magazine. This is a little bit difficult to show with this action because I don't have the correct rifle, but most of these Remington 76 7600s or 760s. They had detachable box magazines, and I think they held 3 by 1 or maybe 4 plus 1. The plus 1 being 1 in the chamber. So of these, the lever action has, typically that lever action has the most capacity, and then my bolt action Winchester, and then it's kind of a tie between the pump action and the bolt action. If you would get a rifle that has a detachable box magazine, go ahead and pick yourself up another one almost immediately. You can actually just immediately buy the rifle and another magazine. You can carry an extra reload of rounds in your pocket that are held quietly by putting them in this magazine. And then if you need to, you can quickly change out your magazines, the empty for the full, and shoot if you need to. But most importantly, it keeps the rounds quiet in your pocket. The most accurate style between the bolt action, lever action, and pump action, typically your bolt action is going to be your most accurate rifle. And another thing with these is they're easily, the way they're made today, they're easily scopable. So you can get yourself a simple scope and make them even more accurate. The lever actions, especially the one that I have, is known not to be the most accurate, and it is one of the, like, it's not impossible, but it's more difficult to scope. You got to get a side mount scope because the bullet pops out of the top here. And then the pump actions are fairly convenient to scope. But you can see this, I mean, you can pick this up This is a handy rifle to carry without the scope. The larger scope you put on a rifle, and this is a pretty convenient rifle, well, this style is pretty convenient to carry. A balance as well right here. If you put a scope on there, you mess with the balance a little bit. This is not so easy to carry. I'm able to do it, but it's not as comfortable to carry. It is the most available. A bolt action is the most available. They're in the highest production. They are some of the easier rifles to reproduce. Lever actions, the Winchester makes a lever action, Marlin makes a lever action, Henry, Browning, Savage, I think it's about all of them, all make lever actions. The calibers they're available in isn't very plentiful though, and that's because the type of bullets that's needed to go into these. Pump actions, similar to the action on this shotgun, although this isn't that rifle. I'll throw a picture of a 7600 or a 760 up on the screen right now. All right, they usually, like I said, usually the rounds are held in a box magazine. The ammo and caliber, they go anywhere from the 27 caliber, and they actually might go to the 24 caliber, all the way up to the 30 caliber or 35 caliber. The bolt action has the widest range of calibers available to you. All right, this is a total slide for characteristics. In the left-hand side, you can see that I assigned some priority to values, such as accuracy, available rifles, and calibers. I then went through and tallied up all the numbers, applying that weighted factor to come up with a number on the bottom. The number on the bottom basically is just a number that tells me what I already knew. Bolt action rifles are the most practical for new hunters to buy, provided you can shoot them in the firing positions that they're required for still hunting. And the single shot, I'm not even going to cover the single shot in here. It's kind of a, as you age in hunting, you'll start to find different pleasures. And one of the pleasures that some people get out of hunting is taking one good shot. For someone who wants to spend more time in the woods versus dragging things home. And, you know, if you're new, that may not sound interesting to you, but as you age, your time in the woods is probably more important than your time dragging stuff out. Okay, right now what we're going to do is go to the field, and I'm going to review some of these videos with you. Okay, as you watch these firing positions, pay particular attention to the muzzle and how much it moves to work the action in each of these positions. All right, you see me shake my head in this video. That's because it's never a good practice to rest your barrel on your rifle rest. Here you'll see that I'm actually hitting my forearm in the prone position with the lever. And then here in the prone position with the lever, come up off the rest, and it's not very supportive at all. In order to work the pump action in the sitting position, it pulls you out of a good, stable firing position. Again, in order to work the pump action, it pulls you out of a good shooting position. And this is the second most common firing position, and it's very difficult to get comfortable with the pump action. Again, this is one of the more common shooting positions during still hunting, and the lever is hitting your forearm when you're in a good body position. And here, in the second most common shooting position for still hunting, you can see the lever action shines. I can rest and secure the rifle on both the left and right hand side of the tree, and the muzzle moves very little.
The kneeling supported with a bolt action, again, the second most common shooting position in still hunting, is very supported and very smooth once it's practiced. This is the third most common shooting position, and the pump action is the best for standing unsupported. For standing supported, not so much, and this is the most common shooting position. All right, the lever is very good in the standing unsupported position as well. It's even better, and I'd say the best, in the most common shooting position during still hunting, which is standing supported. This is the bolt action in the third most common shooting position. With practice, you see it can be fairly smooth. And here it is in action in the most common still hunting shooting position, supported on both the left and the right hand side.
Okay, we went through the field and seen some of the problems and some of the good things going on with these different actions from the top 3 shooting positions. Again, that was the standing supported, kneeling supported, and standing unsupported are the top 3 shooting positions when you are still hunting. You could see from the video that the lever action did good in the standing supported and standing unsupported. In the kneeling supported position, if it did well up against a tree, but when you try to rest, when you try to rest off your knee with these, if you're going to get a kneeling unsupported position, that lever, oftentimes if you're in a good position, that lever is never, not that it's never, but it's going to be real hard to operate. You'll have to reach out pretty far. At that point, you get out of bone support position to operate that lever. So your kneeling unsupported position becomes very unstable and follow-up shots are slower. In the prone, a lever action stinks. That's whether that's prone supported or unsupported. And sitting position, you have when you're tucked up and you're supporting your rifle with your bones, you try to work that action, your support arm's going to get in the way of the lever. So the lever is no good in the prone. There's just not enough room when you're laying on the rifle to work that lever, and it's no good in a kneeling unsupported position or a sitting unsupported position. Your support, which is your arms and bones, get in the way of that lever working. The pump action, you probably saw in there that when you are in a standing supported, which is the most common shooting position, there is no good way to brace with this action. It's even awkward to hold. There's no good way to grab the tree and also grab the tree and support the right. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can do this. You can grab the tree and support the rifle. But what you can't do after that is work this action very smoothly. It's an awkward thing. Your support hands comes off the tree and it's just not very well coordinated. Same thing in the prone. Okay, hopefully it was demonstrated or you were able to see it, but in the prone you need to support the prone supported, you need the support of your bags. It's not very good practice to rest your rifle on anything because it messes with the harmonics. We'll cover it more later. So you're stuck trying to rest on your hand and this slide, and then when you go to work the slide again, you now are out of position. You have to get back down into the mount or the mounted position and try to get on target again. It makes it slower. So, and then if you saw the bolt action, was good in all the positions. And I think it may be slower to work. Fine, I take another quarter of a second to work my action, but because this is all in line, when I come back down, it lets me stay on the rifle, work the action, and I can shoot again, and then shoot again, and then shoot again. I don't have to come off the butt of the rifle. I don't have to come out of position with any of my body. The only thing I have to do is transfer this trigger to up and shooting, cycling, and then back down to the trigger to shoot, and then shoot again. Honestly, to stay on target, and you can get pretty quick with a bolt, the bolt action is what I'm going to recommend for any beginner. I'd even recommend it for advanced people. The only other thing that I got to say is that, we talk about aesthetics, right? If you're in the East and you like the idea of carrying this little light rifle, limiting yourself, as you advance, maybe look at something like this. They're available. Don't buy this. Now these are going for like used. I don't know, were they $1,200, $700 to $1,200. This rifle here, and I'll mention the make. If you guys are experienced, you probably already can tell, but this is a Ruger American. This rifle, when I bought it at the time, was lit in the scope and some, the other stuff, the bullets and the sling and stuff. I was like about $500. And once it was zeroed, I could go out and kill game for $500. I can't even, you notice I'm not even talking about the slide action because they've gone up in price too and they're limited. But this is limited by caliber, 30, 30, 32, 35, 45, 70. All those different calibers aren't real good, and you got to get better at judging ranges if you get out. Well, you probably won't actually, but if you would happen to shoot past 150 in timber or the East, chances are you won't. But the fact that you can't scope all these and the fact that they're limited by caliber, I would stay away from the lever action. You can tell I got one. I have an affection for it, but for a simple working man's rifle who's trying to keep his family together and just get some time in the woods, get yourself a simple bolt action. All right. As you progress, you may get a different action and a different caliber to add to the spice of your hunt, for lack of better words. But as you continue to pick things up, and we've still got a lot of gear to get, remember, always make decisions that are good and common sense for your family, and pick yourself simple, common tools that get the job done when you know how to use them. And I believe the bolt actions today will do that. If you would, go ahead and subscribe. I don't know when these are coming out. I said that in the last few videos. This isn't my only job. I've got a day job in construction, so I cannot promise a schedule. I'm trying my best. I've got a large list of items to get through to teach new hunters, and I'd like for you to be around. Go ahead, like I said, subscribe, hit the icon or whatever else you do on YouTube. I don't have a book recommendation other than if you missed the last video, I would suggest that you get, I'll recommend it again, The Old Man and the Boy. It's a story by Robert Rourke. It's where a young man goes to the ocean side to visit his grandpa, and his grandpa teaches him life lessons through the woods and the wilderness and hunting and fishing. It's a very good book. But until next time, again, don't just sit here and watch videos. Go ahead and get outside and explore your nature. Thank you.